It's a Thursday, and that means it's full steam ahead on the NFL draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. What has happened, and it sets them up for what's about to go down. That's today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. We appreciate you joining us here on this Thursday as we kick into high gear looking towards the draft. We're brought to you today by FanDuel, and you can make every single moment more. Right now, new customers are getting $200 back on bonus bets. When you win a $5 bet, that's $200 back to you. If you win a $5 bet, go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. We're going to get started today. He's Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. He's going to run down the cap for you. He's going to give you all the quarterback stats that you want. He's going to poke holes in all my theories, and he's going to basically be the more level-headed prognosticator of what this offseason is going to look like. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, where you can get the athletic matrix right now. Version 1 is out. Version 2 is coming, as is the draft guide. We're even going to give you a sneak peek at some of the profiles in it today here on the show. I'm really excited about it. You can get more information at NFL33.com as well as RGR Football. And always, if it breaks, you're going to find it on our insider text line at 816-357-8781. That said, we're going to give you impact versus value. We're going to show you a couple of profiles as well, what Brett Veach does to make this all work. And first and foremost, what has changed and what does it mean for this draft process? What do you have, Chris?
Just really quick, you talked about me and dealing with the cap. I did an article yesterday, if you haven't checked it out, Chiefs Corner, covering where the Chiefs should be, assuming the L'Jarius Sneed deal is done, which we're told that it has been done in these past the physical. They've agreed to the contract, but it still hasn't hit the NFL transaction report, which is interesting to me at this point. But I do go break down what the cap should be, what they could do with it. Just had an article come out yesterday on that, so go check that out at Chiefs Corner. Lots to talk about when we start talking about the draft, how Sneed is going to affect what the Chiefs do, how they could really look at the offseason going forward.
I agree with you. Sneed is certainly the latest and maybe the biggest, but I think there's three factors that are changing the way this draft has to go down, and it plays into how Brett Veach approaches it. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But the three major influences right now are L'Jarius Sneed and what it means for the secondary. If you missed Matt Derrick yesterday, folks, he was with me, and he has a little bit more calm demeanor about you don't necessarily have to go do something about Sneed. A lot of us out here would like to see some kind of plan for replacement or development plan behind that. Me and you'll get all kinds of craziness going out there in mock drafts, whether you're looking at ESPN or somewhere else. Then there's the folks that are more concerned about Hollywood's great, but he's a one-year contract, and it doesn't solve the wide receiver position long-term. That's another huge factor as to how you go about it. And then the third for me, and I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, and sometimes I get a little caught up in preparation, but they've returned nearly their entire D-line group. Whereas I thought this was going to be a definite, you have to get a top 100 pick on the D-line. It may not be that case. What stands out to you, those three scenarios? What's most important right now?
I'm going to throw a little bit of a different scenario in there for you. To me, what I'm looking at is where's this roster going to be in 3 years? And you talk about some of the moves that they've made. The Hollywood Brown signing obviously doesn't affect them in 3 years. It affects them this year. And the reason I talk 3 years out is because you have this window with Mahomes, and you're likely going to have it for pretty much his entire career. So you can't just look at things in a window. I know a lot of people want to talk about this being the year of the three-peat, trying to get this championship just for the three-peat. KCSN actually just threw something out there. Would you rather win one Super Bowl over the next 6 years, which is this one to get the three-peat, or win two over the next 6 years? To me, I don't think that's really a fair question because I think that they have a chance of winning more than just two, but that's beside the point. And what I'm really looking at is when you start looking at the draft and we start looking at what is going to change the draft, yes, you have positions of need for this year, but you also have to look at what your roster is going to look like in 2025 and 2026. And I don't want to go much past 2026 because there's going to be so many changes to the roster in the next 2 years that are going to affect what you're going to need in the future. And I think one of the biggest things that you look at, like what they've done in the past several years, they've drafted a couple of edge rushers. That's something that you always want to be keeping stocked at, with young talent that you can keep at a pretty decent cost. So that makes a lot of sense. But really, you start looking at the roster, wide receiver is still a huge position of need. defensive tackle, defensive line. That's a position of need for the next several years. But the big one that stands out to me is they don't have an answer at left tackle. And with your franchise quarterback that they're going to have for the next 10, 11, 15 years, whatever it's going to be from Mahomes, not having somebody there that you really trust, and maybe they trust Wanye. Maybe they do. We can't say that right now, but based on what I saw, I wasn't ready to say he is their left tackle of the future. So to me, that's still a big need for this year.
I think he's part of the answer. I'm not sure he's all of it. We're going to get to that because you're right. It is there. I'm taking a slightly different tack there because I am like Herbie and Matt Derrick might tell you if you ever play Hold'em with me, I am all in on this season because of that dynastic piece. It has to be because in order, a couple of things for Patrick to be considered a GOAT eventually, but for this team to be considered on par at all with New England, they have to have that three-peat because there's not enough longevity, I think, in this build to get to the total volume that the Patriots are going to have. If you want to be the best team in history, that three-peat is the big thing that can get you over that hump, in my opinion. So it's here, it's in front of you, it's available. You got to do everything right now.
And if that's truly the case, then you're trading away 2025 and 2026 draft capital to move up and do things this year. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that's what you have to look at is you have to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to go trade these pieces away to go get this player to plug into this position to fit this role. And you have to make sure, in my mind at least, that's going to be a player that's going to be here for the long haul. And it's somebody that's going to add value to the team for the next 3 years, not just somebody that's going to plug a hole that you have right now.
See, I think a lot of people think like that. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm not targeting certain players to go up and get at this point.
Fair enough.
We're going to talk about impact versus value later in the show, and I'll explain what I'm thinking. You tell me what's wrong with it, but we got to get to where Brett Veach takes chances and what this could look like coming up next. That's what we're going to get into in this draft class in particular here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We all know it's hard to get tickets to Arrowhead, and it's even harder if you're trying to go to a Jayhawk basketball game, but you shouldn't have to worry about the tickets for the next big event that you want to get to. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports events, music venues, comedy, and even theater events near you with great last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can view the seat from the app as well as the best price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets to your next event. And to see that seat from the beginning, that's the big thing for me. I want to know where I'm going to be and what my view is going to be. It's the best feature out there. All in prices, no hidden fees, all up front. It's a great deal that you can check it out. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, you just have to create the account and use the redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. It's the best way to go about it. Gametime, get it today. It's last-minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it is guaranteed. I'm going to tell you this. If you're somebody who watches ESPN or Fox all day long and you're looking for something different, if you're looking for that next evolution about people that know their teams the best, they are local, and they are on our Locked On Sports Today feed. It's free and it's 24/7 here on YouTube as the platform, but also on Amazon Fire. You can get that on even their app. So go check that out if you want that kind of coverage. That's what I'm looking for. And I try to take a 360 view around everything.
Interesting that you mentioned that because we were actually on it yesterday talking about L'Jarius Sneed.
And we're going to be yet again. We do put the best shows, the most pertinent information on there, and we run it 24/7, folks. So check that out. It's here on the platform. Go check it on Locked On Sports Today. Now, I also try to take a 360 view at what the front office needs to do. And Brett Veach does take chances. We know that. And sometimes in the negative, in rushing up for Breeland Speaks, in feeling pressured, I believe, to get McCole Hardman maybe a little bit overdrafted, but he's really, he and his staff has locked down the defensive backfield position. And I want to talk about what those chances are if given the 2 main outside positions that the Chiefs have moved on from players and trying to acquire players as well at the corner and the wideout spot. I've got some information for you, and I want to run this past you, Chris, and get your opinion on how some of these things look. Folks, if you're on the audio, make sure you come back over and check us out on YouTube itself. You can get liked and subbed over there as well. There's a couple of matrix profiles that I want to go through because they are important. You can get these in the Athletic Matrix version 1 right now. These profiles are there along with the top 75 prospects. And the rest is coming in version 2 that will wrap up after the Pro Day circuit is complete. And then it'll all go into the draft guide as well, along with our film grades and production, et cetera. But this is a guy, like you were talking about in the last segment about targeting. I'm not looking to target a specific player, but I do want to make sure that the parameters work. And this is where it comes into what the Chiefs like. And it is sneaky athleticism all the way across. There's a lot of folks talking about cornerbacks and replacing L'Jarius Sneed. I'll give you a couple of options here, and you tell me what you think. The Rutgers quarterback, Max Melton, is CB1 in the Athletic Matrix overall right now. He is 5'11" and does have 32-inch arms, which I think is probably the minimum. And that's the thing. He's a little bit light at 187. And I do think once you get a chance to involve that, you can unmute and tell me what you think of him in terms of his profile. But he's not alone. Another smaller guy from Penn State in Harder Daquan. Again, very good matrix overall. Nice and well-rounded as well. But he to me is a little bit undersized at 5'09" right? So 5'9" and 3/8. Very similar. You get a little bit bigger with Phillip Andrews, who's 3'4" comes to Elijah Jones. And then you get to the guy that I think is the same size as a number of nickel corners. And I think Sanistril from Michigan is a guy that could fit in a role. I don't know if he's going to last till 64. I don't think I would spend 32 on him. But at 182, he's a little light. His arms are a little short, but he is a nice, smooth, explosive range, good quickness kind of corner that allows you to let Trent McDuffie do what he wants to do, and you don't have to go replace L'Jarius Sneed. Would you rather see them do something like that and augment, or do you want to get a one-for-one kind of like a Sneed type, long, strong, and physical?
It's going to be hard. I don't think, based on the way the Chiefs have built that cornerback room, I don't see them spending a top 100 pick on a corner unless somebody drops to him that they like a Trent McDuffie type. And I don't mean necessarily it has to be that level, but the sense that everything that's come out about them drafting Trent McDuffie is they expected him to go top 15. They got him around 20. So to me, that would mean, okay, they see somebody as a high second round guy that they could get at 64 or a high third round guy that they could get at 95 and maybe make a trade up to go get somebody like that. Otherwise, I really don't see them making moves to get corners to replace Sneed. I think that they like what they have on the roster. It's possible that they augment through free agency. I wouldn't mind them going out and getting another corner, but isn't there – that's what I was trying to figure out. What is their arm length requirement? Is it 31?
Generally, I've heard 32 is what they're looking for. They'll 32? Go a little under that. 31 and a half is their bare minimum, as I understand. But you see, like Melton,
McDuffie was under 30, so that's – I mean, he's the exception, obviously, but
he is. Yeah, and movement skills, they change things, right? But you can see a lot of these guys in this class, they're a little bit undersized, but they have good length. They have good speed, and there's a lot of well-rounded athletes in this group, at least in the top 5 in the corners. Now, you keep going down. Quinton Mitchell is the guy that's at the top of the list for most people. He's not quite the well-rounded athlete. Overall, he's the 8th in the main matrix, but you look at his deep speed and his explosive range, those are what really sell. You're talking the 20 yards and out kind of coverage.
Yeah, the big problem with going with this short nickel is you're going to probably see a lot more big slots. And that's just the way that the NFL is going, is that you're going to see a lot more of players that are like Mike Williams size that are in the slot. I mean, that's just the way offenses are running at this point. So I would like to avoid having that issue. And I think with McDuffie still in the corner or in the slot on specific players, I think he'd be okay. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Chiefs decide to do. The thing that they have that's working in their favor is they have Dave Merritt. So they have a little bit of an advantage there because he's going to be able to make it a little bit easier to get past not having a guy like Sneed on your roster.
Agreed. I roll through a couple of others there, folks. If you want to talk centers, if you're worried about Creed Humphrey, I think he's on this roster for a very long time. But if you're worried about it, there's a couple of interesting centers there. They're very diametrically opposed. You could probably play both of them at guard. Bertolini is a really interesting athlete. But I wanted to get to this before we wrap up this segment and talk about impact versus value coming up next. everyone's pretty high on Xavier Worthy in terms of his athleticism, and I really wanted to explain one thing and why it pops out so much to me. These ranks are what comes into play, not as much of a side-to-side threat. If you want change of direction, if you want ankle breaking like Tyreek Hill used to do, you got to look at Brad McConkey in this draft. But here's the difference. Tyreek Hill until this season has had the top explosive range and deep range scores in the history of the Matrix going back 12 draft classes since I started this thing. I had to expand this Matrix graphic to include Xavier Worthy's scores. That's how set apart he is. So if you are just concerned about the type of athlete that Tyreek Hill was down the field, he definitely lives up to that. You can see that it is lopsided towards the deeper ranges and away from the initial explosion and certainly the short area quickness, but it is still a very unique profile that I did want to share with everybody.
No, it's interesting. And the big thing to me, and I'm sorry you're not going to be able to show this on your profiles, but the big thing to me that makes Tyreek Hill so much different than some of the other receivers that are deep threats is he tracks the ball so well. That is something that is going to be very hard to find.
I do have a way to show that, though. It's in the production matrix that will be in the draft guide, folks. So you can check that.
Fair enough.
Well.
It's
and
not.
If you guys haven't checked it
really
out,
where I was going with that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and you're totally legitimate. Like, how do you marry the two? And that's the whole concept. If you guys haven't checked out any of my draft guides before, it's at rogueapc.com. A bunch of contributors there, some heavy duty data folks that help me out, including old friend Gary McKenzie, who you can get in there. And we put it all together. You can get that, and I want you to use the code LOC so you get a nice discount on it. It's worth your time. And we're constantly evolving it. We're going to get back to it. But that just shows a couple of the players that you might want to take some risks on, right? I'm not saying that you have to go get Worthy. A lot of folks feel you have to trade up for him if you did want to do that now. But it's about impact versus value, and I think there's ways to go about both. We're going to get to that coming up next on the Locked On Podcast Network. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in this tournament whenever you want. Whether you're betting on an upset or the one seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook, and that is FanDuel. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins on FanDuel, it's $200 back using point spreads, money lines, whatever you're looking for. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Visit us at FanDuel.com/lockedon. And bet your college hoops until they cut down the nets right now on FanDuel. Again, if you want 24/7 coverage and you want it to not be the same old talking heads, you can get us as well as a number of different Locked On shows on one feed at Locked On Sports Today. Check that out.
Really, really quick, pointing out what you said about Xavier Worthy and his deep speed, his deep ability. I just want to say it also shows how much of a freak athlete Tyreek Hill is, because you have somebody that has the type of explosion that Worthy does, but he doesn't have the agility that Hill does. Right. And that's just so it's diametrically different, and it's interesting to see that type of scenario. Sorry.
It's crazy. And, you can look at like Ricky Pearsall or Brad McConkey, like I said, and the graph is completely different because the strengths are in a different area. It's really rare to have a Tyreek Hill that is strong across the board in every way. It's his deceleration that I think helps him out the most in terms of his cuts in the short area. And no one does that like him. It's just hard to find. Yep. But he's such a unique player, as are some of these guys that we're talking about, that the impact is still a projection, but you feel like it's so unique that it's more of a safe pick in order to get that impact. It's less of a guessing game because they have this physicality about them. But in what we talked about in the first segment, in setting up this draft, you made a good point about if you're 100% all in on this season, like I feel that I am, would you just trade up to target certain players like maybe Worthy or maybe St. Stroll? Who knows? But I think there's a way to do both.
But
well, yeah, exactly.
And we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get funky tomorrow. We are going to throw some crazy trade ideas at you just to see what is on the outer limits of the possibilities. And we'll have a normal mock draft Monday when we're a little bit more, realistic. But I think in approaching impact doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up on value. Like you said, trading away draft capital is always tricky. I think it's they've shown that they'll be opportunistic, excuse me. Like when McDuffie fell, then they went and executed a trade to go get up and get him. It wasn't like giving away the farm. They had to have a specific target. I feel like that's definitely on the table, but I do feel in general, if you can compress your picks into, say, between the second and, I don't know, 120th pick, fourth, fifth-ish, you're going to get enough players that help boost the foundation that allows your stars to continue to shine. And you're going to get somebody that can maybe pull a Rashee Rice and develop into a star. You don't have to go get the Xavier Worthy that you think you plug in day one and he's, he and Hollywood are running down the field together, just, giving defensive coordinators fits. So I think there's a line to walk, but I do think that opportunism is the key.
It is the key, but here's my question to you when you start looking at that. So I don't disagree with you. I think that you have to look at impact versus value, but I think you also have to look at it from the aspect of with where the Chiefs are and with where this roster is. If they're going to trade up and make a big move to go get somebody, it's going to be at a position that is looked at as still hugely positionally valuable in the NFL. And here's the other reality that a lot of people don't want to listen to and don't want to like. Corner is not that position it used to be anymore. Go look at the corner market. Go look at how they're paying corners. Sneed is at 19.1 and he's number 6, and that market hasn't really changed off $20 million from Jalen Ramsey a couple of years ago. So that market hasn't changed. Look at wide receivers. They're close to $30 million a year now. And we're still waiting on Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and some others to get their contracts this year. So to me, if you're going to go make a move, and I'm sorry, I want to be clear. You talked about a guy like Sanistril. If you have to go move up to get him and you're trading away like a third or fourth for next year, that's not the type of move I'm talking about.
Agreed.
I'm simply talking about impact positions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be wide receiver. Maybe it's left tackle. That's still an impact position because if you look at the amount of money that is being paid to that position across the NFL for the higher paid players, that's a huge impact position. Wide receiver is a huge impact position. There are several, obviously quarterback, but the Chiefs already have that. Defensive tackle or pass rush, edge rushers are huge impact type players at this point. That is what the NFL is going towards.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's the magnification of the NFL, in my opinion. Yep. So it's quarterback, left tackle, edge rusher. Now maybe wide receiver is coming into on top.
Oh, I think it's there.
Corner. You do? Okay. Fair enough.
And I would argue pass rushing DT is just there with the ends. And it's not just because of Chris Jones. It's because if you have that guy, I mean, look at the contract that the Raiders just signed. Was it Wilkins to? It was a still pretty big contract.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Chris Jones money, but it's not Aaron Donald money, but you're still talking about huge impact in the middle of a defense that's going to be able to change a game. And you go back and you watch the Super Bowl, and Chris Jones destroyed the 49ers on the third down play at the goal line. If he doesn't make that play, they have 2 easy touchdowns. But he destroyed it because he was playing from the inside and was able to get pressure immediately.
Yeah. The problem with defensive tackle is there's just not enough of it yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's only a handful of prospects in a given draft cycle. So it makes it a little bit harder there, which means any pick there, you have to make sure that you are taking less risk and balancing that impact versus value a little bit better so that you don't find yourself with a bust. I think that's going to be the critical part. So we're going to experiment tomorrow with some of the more outlandish possibilities to go get impact. Then Monday, we're going to come back with a true mock draft Monday and give you value like we usually do. We're going to start exploring some trades there as well, but just not, the craziness. But if you guys are in for a fun show and you want to see what could be possible, do not miss tomorrow.
Not a Freaky Friday Monday, or not a Freaky Friday draft.
Freaky Friday mock draft Monday. Oh, that's what we're doing from now on.
Freaky Friday mock draft and then mock draft Monday. I like it. No, and it's fun because you never know what the Chiefs are going to do at this point. Because right now, and we've talked about this a little bit, but it's truly reality at this point. Kansas City has got it to where they have holes, but I wouldn't say they have major holes left. Signing Brown got them to a point where they don't absolutely have to go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. I'm not saying they won't, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I don't think they have to. Left tackle is still another position where I think that they need help, but are they going to go that way in the first 2 rounds? I don't think they have to.
I do.
Well, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't think they have to, because I think there's also potential there for them to have a huge overdrafting because of the talent that's available and maybe somebody not being there of value.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. So what are the values that we can find? Don't miss tomorrow. Monday's Mock Draft Monday, like we do every week, where we try to go through an honest and realistic assessment of what the Chiefs draft might look like. And we'll be back to you getting ready for this draft as more information gets solidified. Make sure you check out Rogue APC for all the information as it comes out. I'm going to have pre-order up by the weekend so you can get ready for the draft guide when it drops and be ready to roll with everybody else. Thank you for spending your time here. Make sure you like and sub and hit the bell here on YouTube. Get subbed on Spotify, as well as all of the audio platforms, because we're free and available pretty much everywhere that we can think of, and maybe some places that we can't. Somebody on Mars can download us, I'm pretty sure. But make sure that you get what you want, however format that you like. We are here for you 5 days a week plus, and we appreciate you every day. Have a great day, and we'll be back with you tomorrow to look at Freaky Friday mock drafts coming at you live. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you then.